and giving their most solemn blessing, Urbi et Orbi, which the new Pope will impart after he greets the crowds there, that solemn blessing to the city, in Latin, to the city and the world. Which is,
that's that's the first task. That's his first act, is to impart this blessing, because after all, he is the Pontifex Maximus. He is the bridge between heaven and earth. So today we'll see him in the facade of St. Peter's. And that facade, which was built, a beautiful construction by Carlo Maderno from 1612. But even in some of the buildings in Rome, you might not recognize, actually have a loggia of benedictions. So there's a sort of strange side transept on St. John Lateran, because when the popes lived over there, that was where the Pope would come out for the Orbi et Orbi blessing. Or even the Church of San Marco in Piazza Venezia, where Pope Paul II lived, he also had a loggia of the benedictions placed into his house / church / because the popes weren't officially living in the Vatican. And then even what it means to have the Pope on that balcony. If we were in the early 20th century, the first conclaves of the 20th century, there was no Pope on the balcony, because during the so-called Roman question, after the unification of Italy in 1870, during those conclaves, while the newly formed Italian state and the ousted papal state confined within the walls of the Vatican, their tensions between the two of them meant that they would hold the conclave, send out some smoke, but you had to wait. You would not see the Pope appear in the square. And so when Pius XI appeared in that loggia, it was already a statement that things were about to change. So it's a very, very, very exciting moment. I remember, I think it was 2005, all the cardinals, when they first started to have lots and lots of cardinals, they were all trying to fit out on those openings of the balcony. And you were kind of looking at a couple of them like, that looks a little precarious.
Yes.
So let's hope they've worked out the placement, the placement out on the balconies this time.
Absolutely. Here we're seeing a long shot there, and crowds coming down the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione. There are security checks, of course, which is one reason that the crowds may kind of trickle in more than be running into the square. Unfortunately, it's absolutely necessary nowadays. So,
sure, you could see them coming from the security now.
So there's always a metal check and all, so we have to ensure the safety and security there in the square. So,
well, and as we're seeing all this jubilation and excitement, sadly, we have to say goodbye to
I'm like those sports stars that keep quitting and then coming back. I mean, you'll probably see me back in like another 15 minutes.
You are welcome to come back.
Or a bit like the seagull coming in and around the bend.
I really like the sports star comparison better, but I'll handle seagull. Okay. Thank you so much once again. I'm so happy we got to share this moment together.
Thank you for being here with us.
Well, and as Liz mentioned before, when we were talking about what is happening now, what takes so long, I mean, according to John Paul II, I believe his Apostolic Constitution, right, Universi Dominici Gregis, there's a process that's happening, and it starts with the rite of acceptance, which already happened, because that's when we get the white smoke, because the Pope, the man that was elected, had to say yes.
And has to sign and have it certified.
Exactly. So isn't that, it's beautiful, right? We always talk about free will in the Catholic Church. He could say no, but this means that whoever we will see on the loggia has said yes to this. And as you can hear, the crowds are coming, and we see
the pontifical band there coming out, and the Swiss Guards, of course. There's always a traditional salute of the Vatican hymn or anthem to celebrate the occasion. It's part of the festivity of it, and we hear they're playing already and coming out there, all in full uniform.
Well, it's special. It's special too because these last more than 2 weeks, we've had the Swiss Guards present for certain things, but now they have a Pope once again that they are protecting. That is their role. That is their mission, right? To be where the Pope is and to protect him. And so this is extra special because now we see them coming out again to the piazza because we will have a Pope.
Yes. I live with 21 other priests at a residence, so all of us work in the Curia, and we've been sharing at breakfast how hard it is in the morning when we're celebrating Mass, and there's always a prayer in the canon of the Mass for the Pope. And, we now have to skip over that. And it's like your tongue doesn't stop, So now we can pray once again for the Pope as well.
Exactly.
Well, our predecessor popes can pray for us as well.
Exactly.
Intercede in ways.
Yes, that I'm sure of.
We hope and
Yes.
pray
No, for sure.
So again, the bands here will be coming in and playing the anthems, the hymns. One new Pope appears, just like almost the Urbi et Orbi on an Easter or Christmas or solemn occasions.
That's right.
And so it's to be expected at this time, and we probably have another. It's at least a half hour before at earliest the new Pope will appear from the Central Vatican.
But also during this time too, there will be prayer too, and certainly the new Pope will be praying, but also the cardinals will be praying with him.
Exactly. And we will all be
Yes,
praying
of
as
course,
well.
yes,
Everyone in the square will be praying.
Yes, exactly.
Around the world. All of you watching and listening from home, will you join in prayer as well for this moment?
We do indeed. You can be sure even the new Pope hears all this in the background because it's a lot of strong sound that's coming up there and then propagating up into the areas there in the buildings and just outside the loggia there as well. You can hear that. I know that from experience.
Right.
The sounds of the streets, the sounds of the square.
Well, and it must be a sign of. I mean, they must feel encouraged hearing the cheers, the music, because this is a big moment for anyone. And then to come out in the loggia and see thousands upon thousands of people. I mean, if public speaking is not your thing, that would be very intimidating. And so to hear the support of the band and the people clapping and cheering must be extra special for that person.
Absolutely, a huge encouragement as well. Apart from the weight of the office and accepting and realizing the challenge, the immense challenge that they'll be taking on and responsibility, but encouraged by what is the fanfare we're seeing and hearing in St. Peter's Square right now. And as I mentioned, the crowds are filtering in, going through their security check before that, but the square is slowly filling up there with people coming in last minute to be here. Of course, they're lucky they have a little time because we have about this almost 1 hour before the new Pope will appear. And so we see in the blue there the gendarmes, the Vatican gendarmes and the band they have there, and then of course the Swiss Guard in uniform there in position. So,
well, and just again behind the scenes, looking back behind all the process that's happening, I think is so interesting to think we're seeing the crowds waiting, cheering, trying to keep spirits up while they wait the hour or more until we know who the Pope is. And I think as we're talking about, prayer is also a central part of this aspect as well. I mean, before the Pope comes out, we see the first ceremony, the greeting, the Te Deum, where in the Sistine Chapel, after being dressed and saying yes, the Pope goes back to the Sistine Chapel and he takes a seat on a chair and a ceremony begins. And it's introduced with a greeting from the senior cardinal of the Order of Bishops, and then they read a passage from the Gospel, which, as we talked about with Liz and also Dr. O'Donnell, I mean, it grounds the mission of the Pope, the office of the Pope in the Gospel, in the message that Christ gave to Peter, feed my sheep, tend to my sheep. So I don't know, it's a really special moment, I think, when you look behind what's happening right now as we wait for the Pope.
And speaking of the ground, please,
just in the unbroken line of passing the authority and the responsibility of the papacy from Peter all the way on.
And now going on the ground there in the square, we have Sister Nina Krankic, who's from Croatia and is with us there in the square. And she works here at Vatican News and is going to share us tell us more about her own experience there in the square. Sister Nina, can you hear us?
All of our listeners, all who are following us online now. Pretty amazing. I just arrived here at the St. Peter's with my colleagues. We just rushed out of the building and we just arrived here. It's so many people already gathered here. There's the orchestra playing, as you probably can hear and see. The atmosphere is still getting warmed up and it's incredible. We're going to take our place somewhere here among the people, and we're going to wait for that special moment that is going to happen very soon.
Sister Nina, you must have run out of the building there to get there in the square, because I mentioned the crowds coming in now there's got to be some bottleneck there, isn't there?
Yes, we ran out of the building. All the colleagues started screaming, "Watch out, watch out!" There was a white smoke, so we just ran out and ran through the crowd, and we're going now. We're here with our St. Peter's, actually, so we have a pretty good position. So we talk a little bit later. I can tell you more about what's going on, but you actually cannot arrive at the square now because there's so many people from all around all parts of the home gatherings here. So it's really hard to even enter the square at this moment. There's so many journalists. Everybody's doing directions and interviewing people all around. So pretty amazing to see.
So it must feel like a big party almost. I imagine in some ways, doesn't it?
Now the Italians
you know what?
are
This is the
coming
biggest
in.
party that I would ever add. That's for sure. That's for sure.
And we can hear the bands there. We see the Italian Carabinieri band that's coming into the square as well. So I imagine it's adding to the festive atmosphere you're living there, isn't it?
It's very festive atmosphere, and even the Swiss guards are all here, and the music, the people, very festive, very, very beautiful. Something beautiful to see.
All right, Sister Nina, thanks for giving us that update there, and we look forward to connecting with you there again when possible. We know how it's a little tough with the cell signal there, given all the people communicating live on their cell phones and the networks there being a bit saturated. But thank you.
Yeah,
and
I hope to talk to you soon. And you can still make it, people. If you're somewhere around, if you're somewhere close, you can still make it. So try to get on the square and don't miss this special moment
wonderful.
in time. And if you're watching in direct, don't stay with us and wait for that moment that's following.
And Sister Nina, by the way, this is your first experience of this type, isn't it? Your first conclave, and
yes.
So it must be extra special for you.
Oh, amazing. You know what? But even seeing that live, it's something so special. And seeing that many people. As we were coming here from the dicastery, from our building, I've actually seen people cry and screaming, "HABEMUS PAPAM," and which was so touching. People running and crying, and you feel that it's like a special moment in the history of the church and of the world. So it's something that it's just once in a lifetime. So I'm really grateful to be here now.
Wonderful. All righty, Sister Nina, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And we hope to touch base with you there shortly. Okay.
Thank you for calling me.
All right. In the meantime, good luck getting in the square there.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Well, and continuing, as we mentioned before, the atmosphere, but also what we're seeing. You see the bands, Father, as you mentioned, the Italians as well, coming up the stairs that we often saw the Pope Mobile drive up for general audiences. And shortly, we're not sure exactly when, but when the Pope comes out, there's a formula that is said in Latin. And for many of us, we might not have studied Latin in school. I mean, my Latin is quite rusty. So I don't know if maybe, Father, a bit more about what's going to be said. And for those who might not know, what is the formula? What is said? Well,
it says the proto-deacon, and it's Cardinal Momberti is the proto-deacon right now, will come out and say, I have an announcement of great joy. And then he says, we have a Pope, Habemus Papam. I saw some signs there and they didn't have the correct conjugation of Papa, but that's okay. The fact is, the news is and it's almost universal language now in terms of communicating the fact that we now have a Pope.
And then after that, he announces the name.
The name, yes, in Latin.
Yeah.
And so I'll tell you a funny story of that too. A friend of mine was in the square when Paul VI was elected, and he was standing. He's from the U.S. He was a student at the North American College, and no, it was when John Paul II was elected, and he was standing next to an Italian woman, and they announced that the Pope was from Polonia, and this Italian woman crossed herself and said, "Grazie a Dio da Bologna."
Da Bologna.
Thank God from Bologna.
Yes.
You can hear Polonia in Italian meaning Poland.
Yes.
Yeah, it's tricky. If you don't know Italian or Latin, it might be a bit confusing. But no, it's extra special. And as you mentioned, I mean, I remember watching with some of my colleagues here at the start of this week some of the compilations from the HABEMUS PAPAMs that we have video or audio of, which is only in the last just over 100 years that we have video. And it's been really interesting because whether you know Latin or not, you know that phrase and you know what it means. And so it's a big signal to a new chapter in the church.
And I'm thinking that the last announcement was by Cardinal Jean-Louis Touron, whom I worked with a great deal.
Oh, wow.
And he made that announcement, and it was so good. And he's gone home to heaven, but I'm sure he's now rejoicing once again tonight.
That's right. I remember him very well when he announced introduced Pope Francis, and I remember even hearing his name. I was wondering who, and then I looked it up very quickly because as always, it's a surprise,
right?
It's a surprise, and
you don't know, because we have such a list of people, and as we've said throughout this entire Smoke Watch, that it's the Holy Spirit that guides the decision, and so we don't know till that moment.
Here we see a formation of the Italian military bands,
Yes. Wow.
Guardia Finanza, Carabinieri, and then of course the gendarmes, the Vatican Gendarmerie, their own band, and then we have the Swiss Guards all in position there. We see the usually at a point after the Pope appears, so there'll be a mutual salute of both national anthems.
Here's
and hymns.
the retired
Papal preacher.
Papal preacher, and also then there's
Cardinal Raniero canta la messa, looking at his phone there, we see.
Technology.
And then Capuchin Cardinal there.
And also Cardinal Sean from Boston.
Exactly.
O'Malley.
Exactly. Sean O'Malley.
Yes.
So here we are. The bands are playing. And we have an introduction here to the Vatican anthem. Oh no, the Italian anthem. Sorry about that.
That's true. So the hymns, the songs will be going on until we hear that famous line, "HABEMUS PAPAM," and we see the Pope come out on the balcony.
So we're hearing notes from the Italian national anthem. Fratelli d'Italia.
He must.
And we've just heard those, the Vatican hymn and then the Italian national anthem played, mutual salute between the two groups of bands. And now the mutual salute and greeting of both. This is just like when we see at Easter and at Christmas,
the Urbi et Orbi.
during the Urbi et Orbi, when the Pope, gives his blessing to the city and to the world. And before that, his Christmas or Easter message. So the bands are lined up there as we await the curtains to be pulled back there from the central loggia of St. Peter's Basilica there.
And even though the Holy See is a separate country, it's important for Italy to be involved in this too, because he's also the Bishop of Rome. So it's his flock is in Rome as well.
Actually, just now taking off my headphones to hear some of the ambient sound. You could hear kind of the craziness that's going on outside. You could hear helicopters, ambulances,
sure,
fire
yeah.
trucks, everything. And
Wow.
so, I mean, even at the end of Via Conciliazione, where we are, you can hear the excitement and the festivities that are happening outside.
Monsignor, I think some of that chimney smoke has gotten
Gotten to me, yes.
There's a lot of pollen in the
Oh,
air,
yeah,
so it's an
definitely,
allergy time
yes.
here as we head into summer. But what a stunning view there. We have the sun just going down behind the facade of St. Peter's. It's always stunning, when it comes time to sunset there with the facade facing east, but then when you're looking at the basilica and the sun going down behind it, it's always
So beautiful.
so beautiful. Yeah.
But everybody's eyes are on this.
Yeah. Everybody's looking
Yes.
up, waiting for the doors to open and then the white curtains to be pulled back.
Well, and there's actually a story about what's happening right now. Again, the Room of Tears, the Pope, the new Pope getting dressed, and we know that there are 3 sizes of the white cassocks because you don't know who's going to be elected, but you have to be
Yes.
prepared. And actually, one of our colleagues, Christopher Wells, who was on this morning actually on the Smoke Watch, was talking about Pope John the 23rd, and he was.
That's a letter. Yes.
And actually, since it didn't fit, they had to tie it like a medical
Yes,
garment.
Exactly.
And so it's a funny little anecdote to just remember that. I mean, no one knows, and so everyone's prepared. But that's what's going on right now. They're trying on the garments. And they're seeing what's fitting.
And of course, they have different sizes available to start with,
Yes,
but
yeah.
sometimes
3
they might need
different,
adjusting depending.
Exactly. We're all made in God's image and likeness in different
Yes.
sizes. So there you go.
See all those flags representing the different nations present. Also, it is the Jubilee of Hope, and so we have pilgrims here for Jubilee events over these days as well. I think I read about 15,000 for currently in Rome just for the Jubilee
Yeah.
themed events. For pilgrimages that were organized well ahead of time.
Well, and we're hearing from our producer, Francesca Merlo, that they're looking outside our building, and as I mentioned, there's helicopters, but they're blocking off the roads, and that's what Liz was
Really?
mentioning too.
Wow.
That people are stopping,
Yes.
and they're just trying to get to the square as fast as they can.
Oh.
So it's a moment of organized chaos a bit in the square and around the Vatican.
We have reports that there are people literally running to get into the square. And they will eventually, as they go through the checks and controls there. They do an extraordinary job of the crowd control as well, with these
Yes.
many people coming into St. Peter's Square and avoiding any potential problems or
Mhm.
issues due to that. So
Well, and that is, you have to think that, I mean, maybe everything has a purpose, right? Everything has a reason, because we have this time in between the white smoke and the HABEMUS PAPAM, maybe also for everyone to get to the square. It's a dual-edged sword. The new Pope is being prepared and ready to go to the loggia, but it's also to let everyone who can get to the square to be there for that special moment.
and we're seeing it with our Vati drone footage here,
Yes.
as I'd like to call it. And you can see the square there. It's just wonderful. You can get a sense of the crowds and then on the people kind of streaming in
Mhm.
from the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione, and some of the side streets there.
Talking about the universality of the church, I just got a message from a UN official in Gaza who's
Wow.
listening to this transmission, and so you could see
Wonderful.
how connected people are, and,
That's
and
amazing.
how grateful they are to be able to hear
Wow.
Vatican news as well.
Yeah, of course.
Well, we're grateful to have you here to say some nice, intelligent things for us,
I don't know.
as well as
Well,
and give us some interesting input on all, and to share this experience. As we see the our drone footage there
the Vati
shows
drone.
our Vati drone is showing the avenue there filling up with people, and as they come closer to the square, then they just go through a check there.
Mhm.
And we'll
And all the flags are ready.
And Thaddeus, because since this is your third conclave in Rome.
In Rome, yes.
And
Well,
so-
I haven't been a conclave elsewhere.
No, but
Please.
you've been in Rome.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
But have you ever had the opportunity? Because I know working here, we're always pretty much in here. But have you ever had the chance to run out to the square or see the
Yes.
excitement?
For Pope Benedict, I was up there on the colonnade there. If you're looking here on the footage here, you can see here on the left side
Mhm.
there on that colonnade there where the statues are on top of the Charlemagne wing
Right.
of the colonnade. I was up there and able to just view from that position where all the photographers, videographers were, or most of them anyway, accredited to see him come out and greet the crowds and give his blessing. And I remember, this is a strange thing, but after that event, going back into the Vatican and running into Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio.
Oh my
as he
gosh.
was, this is long after the, probably about an hour after the blessing was given at the
Okay.
end of the, and I remember it distinctly because I knew the faces of all the cardinals, and so it was a
Little did you know.
Little did I know. Little did I know. And then when there we see some of the cardinals there. There's Cardinal, I think that's Cardinal Whirl, and we see, and then
Canta Mesa,
Mhm.
Canta La Mesa,
Canta La
Right.
Mesa, and then
O'Malley.
The cardinal non-electors.
Yeah, exactly. They're over 80,
Mhm.
And
so
there's,
they're non-electors.
Sister Petrina,
Yes.
the head of the Governatorato now.
And that's Archbishop Fisichella as well, I think.
Yeah, we see the
fixing.
secretary of the dicastery for communication there, Monsignor Lucho Ruiz, as well. Anyway,
Well, and so Thaddeus, was it? I mean, obviously, it's very different being inside here, but the excitement is still pretty much the same. Being on the braccio, the colonnade, and being
very
here.
much so, because you're seeing things up close, and not only into the bells I was mentioning earlier that that you hear very clearly and loudly, but then seeing from a unique angle, almost at below the level of the central loggia, but
Mhm.
higher up from down in the square. In 2013, then I remember I was down the street on the Conciliazione looking out the window at the crowds on Via della Conciliazione, and I could see the central loggia from which Pope Francis
Wow.
appeared then in 2013. So that was my other experience per se, and a unique one at that. And now here in our studio here, right close to the action there,
Exactly.
it's a third privileged experience. And again, what's really you really feel is the excitement of it, and the joy of having a new pope, but then also the expectation: who's it going to be?
Right.
And I remember with Pope Benedict, it was a bit the weather was a bit cloudy and cool then. I mean, this is a day of just brilliant sunshine, mild temps. Of course, we're in May, and so things warm up here quite a bit and pretty quickly.
When Pope Francis was elected, I was helping out at an English-speaking parish in Geneva, in addition to my other work. And the pastor had asked me to give a talk to the parents of the First Communion children. And we got the news just as I was ready to start the talk. So
Oh.
I know tonight I'm not going to get anything else done with this.
Wow. So you've gotten the
Yeah.
announcement in different places
Yes,
all around
exactly.
the world.
Yes.
No, that's amazing. And every time just a tad different. And
We have joining us Father Paul Samasumo, who's from Zambia, and he's head of the English Africa section here at Vatican News and the Dicastery for Communication. Father Samasumo, good to have you here. Many of our listeners who listen to the liturgies will recognize your voice as well as you do the commentaries for the papal events. How's this experience for you now?
Thanks, TJ. Actually, I've been here all day, and then I went outside to meet someone. And you won't believe I got blocked. I could hardly come in. I've been trying to come back for the last 10 minutes.
Oh.
But fortunately, the security forces allowed me when I showed my badge. And people are just running into the square. It's amazing. It's my first conclave. I've never... I came in just after Pope Francis had been elected.
wow.
So this is quite an experience for you.
It is
then,
an
too.
experience for me as well, yeah.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Even just the moments leading up to this experience. I live in a house where some of the cardinals also were staying before they moved to Santa Marta. Of course, they're their own little tables, and sometimes we just like provoke them. They had some secrecy, of course, confidentiality, but it was so wonderful, and the dedication of them going to the congregations, the meetings, and even the non-electors. Some of them live there permanently in our house, and we have some of the staff who have been helping. They had to also do the swearing in, so that they would be. Some of them couldn't go because they're small children and they wanted to stay next to their children. So it has been a great experience, even from that point of view.
Well, and also, since you're from Zambia, how do you think people in Africa, the African continent, are taking this moment? I mean, we have viewers, listeners from all around the world, but your experience in watching the conclave and being prepared for this HABEMUS PAPAM moment, like, what do you think is the atmosphere, the environment of people watching in Africa?
It's a great moment. I can tell you already, I've received about 5 or 6 calls just within the space of 10 minutes as I was coming in.
Wow.
From some of my colleagues who are in the media. And I think the most, the call that I really enjoyed was from my uncle. My uncle is 82, and usually we talk to him through my aunt because he has a problem of hearing. But he's so excited. So everybody's following. They're following on various channels there, the national television stations, on radio, and so forth. It's a great moment. And knowing Africa, they've always been fascinated by the popes. I remember even from a time when I was a young boy myself in catechism, we used to be taught the anthem, the papal anthem.
Really?
Yeah.
So that was very familiar for you to hear.
Not this one, but there's an old one that was translated in our languages.
Oh, wonderful! Translated in your language.
Yes, yeah.
And your language or
Yes,
languages?
exactly.
And what are your languages, by the way? Just
Well, I'm from Zambia. And Zambia has 72 languages.
Oh my goodness.
Of which 8 or so are the main ones that's widely spoken. English is the official language, so you can get by with that.
Fantastic. And I imagine people tune in even to our live streams, even if it's in Italian, Latin, or with your translation in English. I imagine it's a way to connect people. Tune in the same, even if they don't understand what's being said.
It is, and some directors of some of our Catholic radio stations. I'll give you an example. In Kenya alone, there are about 11 Catholic radio stations.
Wow.
So they've been asking, what time is the smoke? Why are we having the smoke? Yeah.
Well, and it's really interesting now that we have you, Father Paul, in here, because as we heard from Father Bob, we had a message from Gaza, listening
Yes.
there, and then now you hearing messages from all over, and so it's
Exactly.
the wide-reaching effect of this moment, and as the message or the theme that we've seen throughout our conversation has been universality, and how this is not just a moment for people here in Rome, and not just for Catholics, for people everywhere.
In fact, I'd like to thank people around the globe tuning into our live stream here. Maybe you're watching on a local or a national network, local Catholic radio, wherever you're listening. Thanks for joining us here. We're going to be providing you with all the information we can as we await this historic moment to find out who the new Pope is. And we'll know pretty soon. It's been about about a half hour or so since the
Close to
smoke.
an hour.
An hour.
An hour? Okay.
It was around
The
6
time
o'clock
flies.
Rome
Okay,
time.
There you
Yeah,
are.
it was 6:07 or
Something like
So
that.
any moment now there. And we see the crowds are coming in to the square, still streaming in, slowly but surely. On the sides there, you can see on the right side and then the left side after they've gone through the checks there, and then coming into the square. And they can all see things pretty well because there are these big television screens and good high-res ones too in the square and along the Conciliazione Avenue leading into the square. So many people, they can see just what we're seeing all together here, these same images and coverage. Sometimes there's some text message or some subtitling there and info for them, but they can get a good idea of what's happening even if they're not up close, thanks to the nice new technology we have out there.
Well, and I'm sure, as we all talked about before, and Father Paula, you would also, I'm sure, have experience with this, but using like the screens in the square, us doing this commentary, And you have to imagine that social media is blowing up with this moment, you know?
Oh yes.
I mean, everyone that's in the square is live streaming, I'm sure, taking videos, taking pictures. And so the news is spreading even faster than it would have 10, 20, 30 years ago.
Exactly. Even just here in Rome, just the streets, the cafes. What I found interesting is I'm sure you've seen the guys that sell trinkets and stuff.
Sure.
Some of them are from Senegal, or from Bangladesh, and so forth. And when the smoke came out, this guy asked me, "Do we have a pope?" And he said, "Do we have a
Do
pope?"
we have a
I thought most of them are Muslims, but
Sure.
that kind of interest is really very touching, and I found very moving.
Right.
To be honest, yeah.
Absolutely.
I have another story on that. When Pope John Paul II died, I told you I was on my way to Gambia and I had to go through Senegal. So in Dakar, there was this long line that I was waiting to go in through immigration. And the guard pulled me out and said, the Pope has died. I said, yes, I know. So then he said, you come up to the front. And then he brought me to the
wow.
official and he said, you must have this father go through now because the Pope has died. And then he told me that he had a chapelet, a rosary from John Paul II because he was part of the police when John Paul II visited Dakar. Next morning, 5 o'clock, I'm back in the line because I have to then fly to Gambia. And again, he came, pulled me out of the line, got me through, is everything okay with you? It was really amazing. But you see, again, what the Pope means to so many people. And he told me he was Muslim, but, it was
Wow.
he was important religious leader.
Right, of course.
Again, I'm sure people around the world now are just tuning in, dropping in and out of this broadcast and other broadcasts to see what we're all waiting for with anticipation of who the new Pope is. And that should be very soon now. And we'll know, of course, not only from the video we have here, but then when the crowds let us know with their cheers and applause.
And it will be we'll all be trying to give you immediately the name of the cardinal, which
Yes.
has now become the Pope. And as I believe, TJ, you mentioned earlier, or no, Father Bob, you mentioned it will be in Latin. And
Yes.
so we'll all be brushing up on our Latin in between, now and then. So
Yes.
that's, we will have the name correctly. And then we'll also get to hear the name that the new Pope chooses
Yes.
to be
I
his
think
new.
the name is always also interesting because it kind of gives this vision of what he wants to do with the papas. Probably not
Mhm.
what he wants to do, but what what inspires him. And my father had an anecdote there. I also have one. And when Pope Francis chose the name Francis, one of the Jesuits in Zambia told me, we were so excited because we thought you were
Francis
chosen Francis
Xavier.
Xavier.
Yes. And actually, it was the next morning that Francis clarified that this was
Mhm.
Francis of Assisi. So
Yeah, it's true because a lot of people were
Yes,
trying to
yeah,
guess
sure.
and figure it out.
That's right. When he met with journalists, he explained the origin of the name that he took and
Mhm.
why.
And it's special, like you mentioned, Mother Paul, right? So it usually drives their an idea of what the focus might be for the pontificate choosing this special name. And we had mentioned earlier, right, that the person, I think it was Liz that mentioned, the person becomes a new person in that sense. The Pope is a new man because he gets rid of the old name, takes on this new name, and he's no longer just whoever, cardinal, whoever. He's the Pope of the Universal Church, the Pope that is the symbol of the Catholic Church around the world. Not only because he is known as the Pope, but also because of his white cassock that is widely recognizable.
We're seeing these camera shots. Those big television screens, people know when they're on camera, and so they have their moment of fame.
They're
Their few
thrilled.
seconds of
Yes.
fame, waving and greeting everyone there. So it's always kind of fun too. It brings a little involvement and participation for everyone.
And it's good that the authorities, I think they planned this very well. You have screens around the Vatican. So that reduces also the congestion. We have the new square, which has just been redone for the Jubilee year here. So there's another screen there just outside this building. And people are just sitting out there. They are not rushing to go into the square because they can see. And maybe they even get a better shot from a better view from the screen there. So there are a number of these large screens surrounding the area. And I think it was very good planning on that part.
Yeah, wonderful. In fact, and then even just the organization, I'm always impressed with the organization, crowd organization, how people are led into these areas to assure that they can get in. It might take a little time, but then also how everything has come off so well without a hitch.
Again, it
despite
was
these
almost
big
prophetic
crowds.
because so much of the reconfiguration of the square and Via della Conciliazione was done for the Jubilee, but it served very well for the funeral and now for the new Pope.
Yeah, the city has done all these
Yes.
works projects also to help traffic flow well through the area. And here we have,
Yes. So
it looked like, let's see here, that was Cardinal Schönborn, was it?
yes, and then
also to the,
Cardinal, who was the head of the Christian Unity.
that's right, that's right.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can hear the helicopters. You
Yes.
can hear them in the
Yeah,
square now.
yeah.
So it's getting louder and more apparent that there's people from all over, and everyone's getting images of the square.
And I think the security forces trying to
Yes.
keep the peace.
Mhm.
And I noticed also they blocked some of the roads leading to so that people are running across the roads, you know.
Right.
So
Got to keep them safe
you
too.
gotta keep them safe, right, Kelsey?
Well, and so one of our colleagues, Lisa Zengarini, she did a lot of research on why we have this tradition of changing the baptismal name of the cardinal into the name for the pope, and it actually started way back,
It looks like there may be.
yeah, 2,000 years ago to Saint Peter, whose original name was
Right.
Simon, and so it stems all the way from that. And it's a lineage that has been continuous since that time. And actually, what's interesting is that not all the popes have done this. Out of the 266 now, 267, only 129 have actually chosen a new name, which I never realized.
It was
I-
much later
Mhm.
before the new name, was put into.
There you
practice.
go. And that was John the 12th,
Mhm.
Pope John the 12th, and only during that time from 955 to today, it's only two other people that have not
Yes.
taken new names, which is interesting.
Very interesting.
Yes. So we've gone from the smoke watch and warning now to the Pope watch.
Yes.
We are on
the
a
new
Pope
watch
watch.
here from the central balcony, and I think we're coming up on prime time here. I think soon we should be seeing the new Pope appear, and we're getting some zooming. Some close-ups here of the crowds there, and we saw
Mhm.
some Vatican officials. In fact, before.
TJ,
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus papam. Eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost, qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem XIV.
Habemus Papam.
La pace sia con tutti voi. Fratelli, sorelle carissimi, questo è il primo saluto del Cristo risorto, il buon pastore che ha dato la vita per il gregge di Dio. Anch'io vorrei che questo saluto di pace entrasse nel vostro cuore, raggiungesse le vostre famiglie, a tutte le persone, ovunque siano, a tutti i popoli, a tutta la terra. La pace sia con voi. Questa è la pace di Cristo risorto, una pace disarmata e una pace disarmante, umile e perseverante. Proviene da Dio, Dio che ci ama a tutti incondizionalmente. Ancora conserviamo nei nostri orecchi quella voce debole ma sempre coraggiosa di Papa Francesco che benediva a Roma. Il Papa che benediva Roma dava la sua benedizione al mondo intero, quella mattina del giorno di Pasqua. Consentitemi di dar seguito a quella stessa benedizione. Dio ci vuole bene, Dio vi ama tutti e il male non prevarrà. Siamo tutti nelle mani di Dio. Pertanto, senza paura, uniti, mano nella mano con Dio e tra di noi, andiamo avanti. Siamo discepoli di Cristo. Cristo ci precede. Il mondo ha bisogno della sua luce. L'umanità necessita di Lui come il ponte per essere raggiunta da Dio e dal suo amore. Aiutateci anche voi, poi gli uni gli altri, a costruire i ponti con il dialogo, con l'incontro, unendoci tutti per essere un solo popolo, sempre in pace. Grazie a Papa Francesco. Voglio ringraziare anche tutti i confratelli cardinali che hanno scelto me per essere successore di Pietro e camminare insieme a voi come Chiesa unita, cercando sempre la pace, la giustizia, cercando sempre lavorare come uomini e donne fedeli a Gesù Cristo, senza paura, per proclamare il Vangelo, per essere missionari. Sono un figlio di Sant'Agostino, agostiniano, che ha detto: con voi sono cristiano e per voi vescovo. In questo senso possiamo tutti camminare insieme verso quella patria la quale Dio ci ha preparato. Alla Chiesa di Roma un saluto speciale. Dobbiamo cercare insieme come essere una chiesa missionaria, una chiesa che costruisce i ponti, il dialogo, sempre aperta a ricevere, come questa piazza con le braccia aperte, a tutti coloro che hanno bisogno della nostra carità, la nostra presenza, il dialogo, l'amore. Y se me permiten también una palabra, un saludo a todos aquellos, y en modo particular a mi querida diócesis de Chiclayo en el Perú, donde un pueblo fiel ha acompañado a su obispo, ha compartido su fe y ha dado tanto para seguir siendo iglesia fiel de Jesucristo. A tutti voi, fratelli e sorelle di Roma, d'Italia, di tutto il mondo, vogliamo essere una chiesa sinodale, una chiesa che cammina, una chiesa che cerca sempre la pace, cerca sempre la carità, cerca sempre di essere vicino specialmente a coloro che soffrono. Oggi, il giorno della supplica alla Madonna di Pompei, nostra Madre Maria vuole sempre camminare con noi, stare vicino, aiutarci con la sua intercessione e il suo amore. Allora vorrei pregare insieme a voi. Preghiamo insieme per questa nuova missione, però per tutta la Chiesa, per la pace nel mondo. E chiediamo questa grazia speciale di Maria, nostra Madre. Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne e benedetto è il frutto del tuo seno, Gesù. Santa Maria, Madre di Dio, prega per noi peccatori, adesso e nell'ora della nostra morte. Amen.
Il Santo Padre Leone, a tutti i fedeli presenti e a quelli che ricevono la sua benedizione a mezzo della radio, della televisione e delle altre tecnologie di comunicazione, concede l'indulgenza plenaria nella forma stabilita dalla Chiesa. Preghiamo Dio Onnipotente perché conservi a lungo il Papa a guida della Chiesa e conceda pace e unità alla Chiesa in tutto il mondo.
Sancti Apostoli Petrus et Paulus, de quorum potestate et auctoritate confidimus, ipsi intercedat pro nobis ad Dominum. Amen. Precibus et meritis Beate Mariae semper Virginis, Beati Michaelis Arcangeli, Beati Ioannis Baptiste, et Sanctorum Apostolorum Petri et Pauli et omnium sanctorum. Misereatur vestri omnipotens Deus, et dimissis omnibus peccatis vestris, perducat vos Iesus Christus ad vitam aeternam. Amen. indulgentiam, absolutionem et remissionem omnium peccatorum vestrorum, spatium vere et fructuose penitentiae, cor semper penitens, et emendationem vitae, gratiam et consolationem Sancti Spiritus, et finalem perseverantiam in bonis operibus tribuat vobis omnipotens et misericors Dominus. Amen. Et benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos et maniat semper.